Welcome to a pocket full of ShonShine. Now, if you're new here, my name is Kendrika. This is a space for a person who is learning to remember their light again. To the person who spent years searching for answers, looking for validation, carrying expectations, and trying to become who everyone else needed them to be. This podcast is for you. This is a space where we explore healing, faith, confidence, intuition, self-discovery, and what it means to come home to yourself. And it's also a space for anyone navigating the many experiences that life places before us. For example, maybe you're a first-generation college student trying to figure out how this thing is supposed to go. Maybe you're experiencing a major life transition for the very first time. Maybe you're learning what it means to move through this life more freely, to navigate adulthood with grace, to build healthy relationships, to live with purpose, on purpose, to trust your soul's guidance, to move through grief, embracing joy, sit with uncertainty, or reinvent yourself along the way. This podcast is for you too. And as we connect, I'll even be sharing some of my most vulnerable experiences, lessons, and reflections. Not because I have all the answers, but because I've learned that sometimes the stories we're afraid to tell are the very stories that help someone else feel seen. My hope is that through these conversations, you'll be reminded that you're not alone in what you're carrying, and that there is wisdom, healing, and growth available to us when we're willing to learn from our experiences rather than run from them. Maybe you've carried titles, roles, expectations for so long that you've forgotten who you are underneath them all. So whatever season you're in, whatever labels you've worn, whatever journey has brought you here, I want you to know that you're welcome. Because each of us arrives carrying a multitude of experiences, stories, lessons, questions, and dreams. And there is room for all of it here. There is room for all of you here. Because if there's one thing I've learned and that I know we have in common is that we've carried something, whether that's expectations, responsibilities, heartbreak, woof, dreams, titles, stories about who you were and who they told you should be. And while those experiences may have shaped you, they no longer have to weigh you down. And as the great Erykah Badu says, I guess nobody ever told you. All you must hold on to is you. Let me sing it. I guess nobody ever told you. All you must hold on to is you, is you, is you. I sing too. So we want to make sure we have all that authenticity in there so you know it's all real. But for real, to me, that means releasing what no longer belongs to us. To travel a little lighter as we go, to make room for what is true and meaningful for the season that we're in. Man, I love music. It's such a powerful messenger. And you'll get some of those tips as we have this podcast and as we move forward too. That's what this journey is all about. That's what a pocket full of ShonShine is about. It's not a space to just become somebody else. It's a space to make room for all that you already are. To be curious, to be honest, to be evolving, to just simply be. And right now, whenever you're listening to this, I simply want to have a conversation. Welcome to a pocket full of ShonShine. It's been a while since I've released a traditional podcast episode. I've shared reflections and thoughts along the way, but recently I felt a pull to return to intentional conversations. Not because I have everything figured out, not because I've reached some destination, but because I've learned that some of the most powerful lessons happen while we're still walking through the journey. So what inspired me to return was a lot of experiences that I've had lately. I've been learning so many things about life, people, community, actions, love, support, and I could go on, but mainly things about myself. I renamed my podcast because I wanted to make sure that it was more than just giving the light to things, because it was called, It's Okay, Right? It was also me making sure that I was recognizing the realness in the dark, because there have been many dark times in my life, and I had to learn how to trust my light in that darkness. So a pocket full of sunshine was a testament, especially in moments where I had to become the light. I had to recognize my light not just as something that somebody can hold on to just when they want to have it, but as something valuable, like valuing your own light. So, of course, it was Sunshine, but my name, Shon, is my middle name. And I would hear people call me that as I grew up, calling me ShonShine. And, you're not really thinking that it's as valuable until you start going through stuff like, whoa, I am bright, and it rhymes. So it just meshed well for me. And I'm glad that it did. So valuing that, even though it's a pocket full of sunshine, it's still something that, you didn't know was going to be right there when you had it. And even when you knew it was there, you didn't know how wonderful it would feel until you took a hold of it, until you really embodied that sunlight, which is what you are. I desire to be a reminder, as I desired to, remind myself. I needed to go through these experiences, though, to be reminded of my light. So I want to tell you about the theme of this season. The theme that keeps coming up for me is returning to yourself. Not becoming somebody new, not you fixing yourself, because you're not broken. Not proving yourself to anybody either. Returning to the person you've always been is, you underneath that fear, that pressure, the expectations, and that survival mode. I think so many of us have spent years trying to become. But what if this is the season that you can actually be about remembering? So some of the topics that you'll hear me talk about will be people pleasing. One thing we'll talk about this season is just knowing that that is one thing that we can be released from. Like, how often do we silence ourselves to keep other people comfortable? How often do we abandon our own needs because we're afraid of disappointing somebody else? There was a moment in my life, many moments, but one in particular, a moment where I was fearful of being misunderstood, so I silenced myself. And I gave other people the power over me remembering my power. Instead of me speaking up for myself, I let them speak over me, which is people pleasing. You're thinking that you're doing yourself a service, but you're actually doing yourself a disservice as well as them, because you don't know when your season is supposed to end, but you would want it to be where you are acting in your highest self. And in those times, I was not. So sometimes those seasons kept being repeated. In those seasons, I didn't choose the boundaries. In those seasons, I did not choose to speak up. When in turn, I would end up repeating that cycle. So people pleasing was not only hurting me, it was also hurting other people. So this is one thing I'll ask you, like what has people pleasing costed you? Because it cost me sometimes like a repeated cycle that I didn't have to repeat. It cost me time, something that I could not get back. And even though I could not get that time back, I was able to reflect and make the time that I have in the present better. So, yeah, that'll be one of the things that we'll talk about. And I'm hoping that you're allowing yourself to even reflect as we're talking about it, as we're having our conversation about it. Another topic that you'll hear me talk about is anxiety versus intuition. For a long time, many of us have confused the two. Anxiety can sometimes be loud, it can be urgent, it can be fearful, and sometimes it can just creep on, it can just creep in. It has a different type of energy depending on what you've experienced for yourself. But, that's just what I've experienced for me. And intuition is like more quiet, it's more steady, it's more grounded. But when you're constantly distracted, it's difficult to hear that inner voice. Have you ever experienced that? Like you're thinking that you're trying to, follow yourself, but you can't. You just can't because you're so distracted. There's so many sounds. There's so many noises, I'll say. There's so much noise and not enough sound. Or you can have that sound mind. You ever heard anybody say, I have a sound mind? It's difficult when there is a lot of noise. When I was in my 20s, I was having an experience of what it was like to be a first time home person, like me having my first home. And I'm thinking that hey, when I move into my home, like this will be easy peasy. Like I got it. Like I know what to do. And I did not know the meaning of home. Like, how am I going to create my home? What does that mean for me? Because you can buy the necessities. You can get the tissue. You can get the milk. You can get the cookie. You can get whatever you need to get for your home. But as far as having that home inside of me, I was a beginner at that. And I didn't know what was required of me in order to have a home within. But that was my starting point. And it was a time where I was beginning to notice that I wasn't as financially responsible as I would have liked to be, or even as disciplined as I would have liked to be. And sometimes there were moments when I would be overwhelmed, and that turned into anxiety. And even when the career that I had at the time, I desired to change it. And I was so afraid of changing it. And I did it anyways. I had the intentional moments in my life where I was really praying and really preparing for the change, but it still didn't change that I was afraid. And I still moved anyway, but again, it still didn't change that I was afraid. Because I was going through it for the first time, not knowing that even though my mind is made up, my body has to adjust to these changes that I'm making. Not knowing that I had to grieve the changes that I was making, There was a lot that was happening at the same time with me. But, as I said before, it was me learning how to have that home within, knowing how to do a clean sweep, knowing how to really, go through that inventory and sometimes just sit with things. The first time when I moved into my first home, I cried for a year and I didn't know why I was crying so much, but I was very joyful, very joyful. I chose the word joyful because I didn't have a lot of people around me at the time because I was choosing a lot of better changes. And with choosing a lot of better changes, that means I was choosing a better circle of people. I was really choosing to be more optimistic and really choosing to be more real with myself and knowing that there was just certain things I wasn't rocking with anymore. And man, it was temporarily lonely. But even though it felt lonely temporarily, it's like I had that knowing that I wasn't alone though. So it's like the anxiety just began to drift away. And it was drastic changes that were coming in. Making better decisions, becoming more financially responsible, becoming more disciplined. Sometimes I couldn't catch a grip on everything at one time. Then I had to remember that I didn't have to. I didn't have to give all, and be all at one time. I didn't have to put all that weight onto my 20-something young self at that time. That's where I really began to learn about giving myself grace and learning how to walk away from that thing that we call a rat race. So a lot of times there were a lot of distractions in my life. Anxiety became a catalyst for that. And even though those things were beginning to change, I had to remember that I was going through a lot of things for the very first time. So again, that's where that grace came in, where I was learning how to give it to myself. So instead of me letting anxiety lead me, I let love lead me, because I was very hard on myself for moving, at that time, and changing careers, knowing that I was physically being drained and learning how to trust that I was okay. Even if the pay was different, even if things were shifting, I was still trusting that I would be okay. And once I said that, once I put that out, everything was okay. And another topic that we'll go into is talking about the marathon. Man, we talk about the rat race, but do we really emphasize the importance of a marathon? We talk about success, not the version social media tries to sell us, like that real version. Like, am I building the life that I actually want? Am I building a life that simply looks impressive to other people? When I chose to change my career and shift to a job that did not pay as well as the other job, I mean, I shifted from one career to the next where I think I was being paid $10.50 an hour. And let me tell y'all, I remember I was in that parking lot and I said, I cannot settle, but I'm trusting you. Like, I was talking to God in my car. I was like, God, I'm trusting you, because I know I made this decision for the best. I did. It was the best decision for me. And I got out of that car because I had already filled out so many job applications and nobody was responding. Some people said I was overqualified. Some places wasn't qualified enough. Just not getting things. Just wasn't coming through. And then this job in particular, I got it on the spot. And then the same day, that manager said, you came in at a perfect time, because we were having raises. We just had a raise. Got a raise the first day. I hadn't even worked a shift. Oh man, when I hear myself just reflect on that, it's like God heard me in that car. Oh, God heard me, because I had a bit of an ego. Like, even though I had the previous job and I was going to this and the pay was I mean, the pay was lower, significantly lower. And I was sitting in that car and I was feeling a little low, like I was settling, like I was going down. And when I got the job on the spot, I got a raise on the spot. And it wasn't even about how much it was, because I don't remember how much it was. It wasn't as much. It doesn't even matter. The point for me was that I felt like God heard me that day by giving me a raise on the first day. And I didn't know that I was going to go into entrepreneurship from that job. Had no idea I was going to become a hairstylist, because my family, like some of them were hairstylists, but it wasn't in a professional setting. So I didn't want to do that. I'm thinking that it would be something that would be draining, or be something that would not be as beneficial. And it ended up being one of the most funnest times in my life. Funnest. Yes, I said funnest. Because it taught me about myself. That's what entrepreneurship is to me. Entrepreneurship is the most spiritual journey you could ever take in your life. It's spiritual. It's more spiritual than anything, because these are the things that's coming from you, your journey. Why are you choosing it? What is your why? So it'll be, things like that we'll talk about, the marathon, because it's definitely been a marathon. And, the last topic that we'll be talking about, because we're going to be talking about more, I'm just naming just a few, just to put in your ears, put in your spirit, so that you can understand that, we're on this journey together. And the last topic will be rebuilding your faith within. And one thing I deeply know is that many people are lacking the wisdom. Have you ever heard that it's like a quote that I heard before, and it says, knowledge is power, but the application of knowledge is power. You gotta apply it. And I don't know if you've ever had this experience where you've heard people, you try to tell somebody something, or you do tell someone something, and they say, I know, but wouldn't you do something differently if you knew? So it's like knowing that sometimes we really have contradicted ourselves, and not have been in that state of knowing that we were doing it for so long. And that's where we lack the wisdom. That's where we lack trust. We lack trust within ourselves. Trust in that inner voice, even trusting your voice, and trusting what you already know. So this season, we'll explore what it means to reconnect with that inner guidance, to reconnect with that God within you, and to stop outsourcing your worth and begin honoring your own knowing. What does it feel to honor it? What does that feel like for you to honor yourself? And I'm continue to being real with you. Like, there have been many intimate moments in my life where I knew that I could no longer continue to outsource an answer that I kept hearing. The only thing about hearing the answer is that you ask yourself another question. What do I do with what I know now? The answer that I gave myself was to just trust. 2 words. After those words comes an action. Now, trusting doesn't always look fun. It isn't fun all the time. It's not. And God understands that. It's up to us to understand that. It isn't even always comfortable, but what it is truthfully in action. And walking in your truth is something that you can only show you, that as you walk in your truth, you will find the answers that you are seeking. You will. And as you continue to trust you, you learn to gain that trust within yourself. You feel what it's like to trust you as you learn what it's like. And sometimes God can put us in these situations where we have no other choice but to trust ourselves because we know what the other side looks like. Sometimes it's like a ruminating room that just keeps going in a loop. Sometimes it's like a repeated cycle, that you're no longer deciding on repeating again. You have to decide. Now you are deciding to reroute. Even if the rerouting of it all is unknown and unfamiliar, at least you know now that you can trust yourself. At least you know now the God within you is helping you to trust yourself. And what I trust from this season, that it gives you hope, that it isn't these episodes that just give you information, but that it's something already enough for you to trust that you can have and to apply. There's so much information in this world. I mean, we consume it every day. We consume information every day, all the time. My deepest desire is that these conversations create space for you to reflect, space for you to be honest, space for healing, space for you to remember who you are after being dismembered for so long. Because sometimes growth isn't about just adding more. Sometimes it's about removing everything that was never truly yours or truly you. So as we begin this new season of A Pocket Full of ShonShine, I know it's a catchy phrase, ShonShine. You gotta put a ShonShine in there. I invite you to come with an open heart. Bring your questions. Bring your authenticity. I know that I am. And I look forward to connecting with you on A Pocket Full of ShonShine. See you soon.